Healing is probably the most hyped up word in the past few years. Everybody has heard it. But is it a trend? I see it getting mixed with goal setting, manifesting, becoming the person worthy for the things that we want. But healing is not about becoming worthy. It's us remembering our inherent worth. A sense of worth we weren't really informed that we had because of our conditioning, because of our childhoods, because of what the failing environment around us kept telling us. You're only worthy if you do this. You're only worthy if I feel happy with you. You're only worthy if you're useful. We never really truly learned that we're just worthy for who we are. And that is especially true for those of you raised by emotionally mature and narcissistic parents. Your worth as a person was never unconditionally reflected on you. You were only reflected some type of worth and value when you were performing up to the standards of your demanding parent. Now, healing is not about us becoming perfect, but healing is essentially an act of self-respect. It's not a makeover, it's not a trend, or something we do to become more palatable. And it's definitely not what we must do in order to earn or attract the perfect man who somehow is so incredible. This man, the standard is so high that he requires us to be healed in order to find us. Do you see how patriarchy found its way into our personal growth? We made men the center, the prize, all over again. We just reformed the language around it. Healing is a deep and personal restoration of the self, a rebuild of the self. It's a revolt against a past that told us to be small, silent, and selfless. We're not trying to perfect ourselves. We are trying to remember ourselves. So when we talk about healing, if we take out all of the noise of manifesting and attracting these type of people and doing this and doing the other, essentially what healing is a second chance at life, especially since healing, and for the most part, what the healing process is a process of reparenting ourselves, of basically becoming for ourselves the parent we needed and didn't get. So we're teaching ourselves basically how to be human. It's truly a second chance at life. It's almost like we can restart, an opportunity to rebuild ourselves after a past that left us fragmented and stuck in survival. Now, are some foundational things I want you to know about healing. Again, if we exclude this commercial, relationship-centric, men-centric narrative of what healing is for women. The first thing is that healing begins with truth-telling. Healing is truth-telling, really. And the truth that we are looking for is the truth about what happened to us. A truth that will set us free eventually, but at first will kind of possibly break our hearts. And so the truth means what really happened to us, who raised us, who did we become in order to survive. And all these things are possibly things that nobody has time for. Right? We're thinking, what's the point? Let me just try and heal myself so that I can manifest love. Who cares what happened in my childhood? Who cares? But then life happens and we keep attracting the same people. We keep having the same toxic relationships. We keep feeling the same feelings. We're stuck in loops and patterns. And then we're like, oh, wait a minute. I'm going to have to go back, don't I? I personally believe that we should include the healing process as a thing we all do in our lives post our childhoods, in our early 20s. Can you imagine the additional suffering that you would have prevented yourself from experiencing had you had healed in your early 20s before all of the things that happened in your 20s because of what happened in your childhood accumulated to more and more hurt, right? So I think it should be something we do preemptively, just as a way to kind of, take care of ourselves post childhood to see what happened to us and to kind of heal and so come into life less burdened. But the idea is this, that whatever is left to be unconscious is what will sort of be what we will call fate. And that's not me, that's Jung. But, until he specifically said, until the unconscious is made conscious, life will happen and we will think that it's fate, but it's actually just repetition. And so what happens in our lives is life happens and kind of forces us to look at the past. By this repetition that our unconscious mind is creating that we call fate, we are starting to see, wait a minute, how come this keeps happening to me? Have you ever had one of those moments where you're like, how come the same exact thing keeps happening to me with these people, with these men, with these jobs, with these patterns, right? So instead of trying to fix what is in the now with tricks and advice and whatever, we do the brave thing and look at the truth. Which brings me to the next truth. The next important thing I want you to know about healing is that knowing the truth is not the same as feeling the truth. We can't just know it and be like, oh, I know what happened to me. We must feel the repressed pain. And that's what's difficult about looking at the truth of how devastating it is to remember and feel that pain. But remember that that pain is stored in your body and it's making you sick, and it's also making your life much more difficult because you're burdened with all of this pain and all of these fears, right? So insight alone is not going to be enough. You need emotional experience. And you go to therapy for years, intellectually understand everything, and still not heal if you haven't felt the truth, which is why a lot of you, you write to me, you say, I've read all the books, I've been doing all these things. Yeah, but have you felt your feelings? Have you felt the pain? There's something so magical that happens when we truly connect to how things felt in the past. And it's almost like all of this pain just evaporates immediately the moment it is seen. And that is the beauty of witnessing. That is the beauty of truly witnessing ourselves in our experience. And that in itself is so healing. So another thing about healing that I want you to know is that you can't heal until you stop protecting the people who hurt you. And yes, specifically, we're talking about parents, which is why it's important to retaliate, to speak up, to say what we feel, not necessarily to them, but to ourselves, to give ourselves the permission to say, no, that was wrong. Instead of saying, oh, they did all they could, oh, minimize it, or, but I was a difficult child, all these things. No, that's the most important thing that you need to be doing is to stop protecting the people who hurt you. Because the idea that, and truly the real reason that we do this is because if we were to truly realize how neglected or humiliated or abused we've been, we would have a hard time accepting that. So we will say, oh, I was too sensitive, they did their best, whatever. But that is the epitome of self-betrayal, right? You abandon the wooden child in you to stay loyal to an adult who caused the wound. And all of this truth, as Alice Miller said, all of the truth of our childhood is stored in our body. And although we can repress it, we can never alter it. It just needs to be felt without defending the abuser. And, through this act of speaking up and validating ourselves and finally saying, wait a minute, this person is not the authority in my life, and I can have an opinion about what they did, so much else shifts for who we are, and for how we heal. So it is an important thing that we can't avoid doing, because if we don't see what happened to us, then it will be hard for us to also see what we're doing to others. So another thing that I want you to learn about healing is that we must unlearn who we became in order to survive. That's what essentially healing is a lot of unlearning. And sitting down with ourselves and being radically honest about the masks that we wore, the roles that we played, the parts of ourselves that we exiled in order to stay safe, needed, and loved. People pleaser, the codependent, the perfectionist, the fixer, the one who rescues everyone but ourselves, the invisible one. And this matters because if not, these identities will keep leading our lives, right? We will stay stuck in performance, disconnection, and exhaustion. I have this session in my HEAL program called Releasing the Masks You Wore. And I got this beautiful reflection the other day that I want to share, which I want to show you what it's like to kind of really have this understanding. And this person said, I didn't realize how much of my personality was actually survival strategy. I thought I was the one who always fixes everything, the one who never asks for help, the strong one. But in this session, I met the little girl underneath all of that. And she was so tired. I started crying when I realized I never really gave myself permission to just be. I've been performing for so long that I forgot that I'm allowed to receive by just existing. And this is what happens when we stop asking what's wrong with me and we start seeing who did we become in order to survive, right? And it's always traced back into the past where we adapted to all of that. But by just the action of looking at it and working with these parts, we release these patterns, right? And although then we have, our real life when we have to do more things, right? So to act in alignment with the things that we learned, because habit is going to be easier to fall into, and people around us are going to expect us to continue to be whoever we've been. Now, coming out of this will require a new strategy, right? Becoming a new person, right? And teaching ourselves how to operate through being ourselves, and rather than wearing all of these masks that make us lovable and wanted in this world. Now, another important thing about healing, which is very, very, very important, and also especially when it comes to women and the women that I work with, and I see it all the time, is that healing includes rage. It's not just grief. It's a lot of grief, but it's a lot of rage too. And rage here is not necessarily just a protective feeling that hides the grief. It's a very attuned response to what happened to us, to the fact that we couldn't speak up, to the fact that we couldn't run away. All of this energy, to humiliation, to criticism, to not being treated as someone worthy. So all of this rage can really mobilize so much change in us, but we have to feel it for what it is. Because what happens that when we repress and suppress all of this rage, what we do is turn it against ourselves, right? And then we hate ourselves, we're addicted, we're depressed, or we displace it onto others. So rage is not to be managed or bypassed. It's sacred. And especially for women waking up to their inner rage is absolute, it's a compass for where we want to go, right? All of that rage can fuel so much empowerment and so much agency that has been robbed off of us for so long, starting from the narcissistic parent in our narcissistic, household. That was an oppressive system that then prepares us for a society that continues to oppress us in one way or the next, and continues to force us to hold it all in. Unless it's nice and kind and loving and soft and feminine, we're supposed to hide it. And that becomes the rage that we hold within, ready to explode. And unfortunately, a lot of us just turn that against ourselves. So healing is not beautiful little story about us just crying with our little inner children. It's also coming in touch with our inner rage and then channeling all of that energy, which is a life force. If you think about rage, if somebody's doing something to you and you get angry, all of that rage can mobilize you to set yourself free, and kick the shit out of that person that is doing something to you. That's what rage is. Rage is you just finally saying enough, right? And that energy can be super mobilizing. Another thing about healing that I find very, very important is that we need a witness. And not a fixer, not a guru, not a Prince Charming to sweep us off our feet, but a compassionate witness. The presence of someone who sees us and witnesses us without judgment is so healing and validating. And it's actually a massively corrective experience to what happened to us in the past, that things were happening to us. We were being criticized, invalidated, abused, humiliated in humiliating rituals that a lot of you have been through. If you have narcissistic parents, they tend to like to give you some crazy punishments that everybody can see so that everybody can take the example and not want to be like you. But all these things were happening and nobody in that space would say, no, what's happening? This is wrong. And so you were left feeling all these things, but absolutely no compassionate witness in that moment, except maybe pity, which is not compassion. Pity is not compassion, right? Pity just makes you also think, oh, is it that bad? Oh, it's even worse, right? So the compassionate witness comes to the form of a therapist, of a good friend, of somebody who helps you through your journey, which is what I am becoming for you also in my program Heal. I'm giving you the space to do the sessions and to do the processing, and then I am a compassionate witness for you to reflect with, and then we do this together. But also, the most important compassionate witness, as far as I'm concerned, is our older self coming back to rescue our inner children. Again, this is how I based my entire framework of us going back as adults and rescuing our child, because heal is essentially a process of reparenting. So the compassionate witness that we seek is beautiful if it's another external person that maybe we don't have access to. Some therapist can fail us really, really bad and make it worse. A friend can say something that is wrong. It's not easy to be relationally vulnerable when you've been so hurt, because also who do you have around you, what dynamics you're in and everything. But the most healing thing that you could do is become the witness yourself, as the adult self, validating and witnessing the story of the child. And that is just so, so healing. And that is the essence, right, of inner child work. Healing is also remembering who we are, right? And coming back to our worth, as I said in the beginning, it has nothing to do with perfection or performance. And I see a lot of people who are doing what I call performative healing, going left and right, saying the right thing, the awoken thing, right? I forgive because this and all that. And what you can see is that they're cultivating a conditional love for their healed self. So meaning they're only I love myself now. I like myself now because I'm perfect. I like myself now because I don't have tantrums. I'm not triggered. I'm calm all the time. But that's not love. That's conditional love. That's exactly what you parented. That is, you self-edited enough to make yourself digestible and likable to you. But true self-love is, sort of, and the love that we want to seek to create within is unconditional, and actually loves the parts that were exiled, and the imperfect parts, we love them the most, right? We don't exile what we don't consider perfect. That's exactly our original wounding, right? For all of us. So don't think that you have to be up for some performance and that you're healed because you don't get triggered anymore, or that you're always in this space of gratitude and positive energy. No, there's ebbs and flows. This is life. You love yourself no matter what. It's like when you have a child, it's going through all these emotions during the day. You don't go, now I don't love you. Now I love you. Now I don't love you. Now, that's not what we do. Right? We continue to show up for ourselves lovingly. We don't try to perform for our own self-acceptance and self-love. Now, lastly, the thing about healing that I most definitely want you to know is that forgiveness is not required for healing. And what's happening here is that many people are forced to forgive because they're told, if you forgive, it means you've healed. If you haven't forgiven, it means you haven't healed. And the people who forgive in order to think that they've healed are actually just finding a new way to bypass their true experience and to gaslight themselves that what happened to them wasn't as bad. And again, we're prioritizing where we stand with others and how others feel over how we feel. It's like, forgiveness will set me free. I don't know. I think the notion of forgiveness is very infected with religious indoctrination. And I'm assuming you can understand where I stand with those things as well, because there's the patriarchal enmeshment between, religion and patriarchy are lockstep, like this just, So all of this kind of forgiving the abusers so that the victim is set free is we are putting, again, like the abusers and the strongest ones get to have more benefits and more rights and more grace than those who are weak. That is a very patriarchal structure, right? That serves the strong and uses the weak. And so we have the weak, which are the children and the vulnerable, are being hurt. And then they're being told, you know what? In order to be set free from what they did to you, you have to forgive them. And in many ways, forgiveness doesn't just come with, inside of you be like, yeah, whatever, I forgive them. No, forgive them is, in many ways, let me just reapproach this. Let me just get close to them. Let me be there when they're old, because I forgive them, right? And I say this often. I think children were just a retirement plan for so many of these emotionally immature and toxic parents that never thought that this retirement plan would retaliate, right? Because they thought, I'm going to raise you, I own you, and then you are going to take care of me. And that's how society functions. And it gives the strongest and the oldest ones the privileges that it steals from the children, right? So the lives of the children are devoted to the parents rather than the parental sort of life being devoted to raising that child. But it's more like, oh, they're going to do their duty, but then there's something for them. And then you're going to pay more expensively for that price, right? So forgiveness, I don't think as a concept we can differentiate it yet. We need to be talking about it a little bit more so that we truly understand what forgiveness is. If we remove spirituality, religion, patriarchy, abusive mentality, right? Victim blaming, forcing victims to once again bow their heads and say it's okay when it is not, right? And I feel until we're sure of what forgiveness truly means outside of all of these things that are affected with so many other things, it's best to feel angry about what happened to us, not in a way that consumes our lives, but in a way that it empowers us and we're no longer looking like this, going like, it was okay. It was not okay. It was not okay. I don't care what or how or who or what happened to them. It was never okay. And that is a truth every person who has been abused is allowed to, that it was not okay. And you do not owe closeness to those who hurt you. And you do not owe forgiveness to those who didn't even know, don't even recognize that they've done anything wrong, right? Mind you, that's how bad it is, right? We're telling victims to forgive abusers that don't even think they did something wrong. That's how entitled they are. It's just really swapping the roles. Children are supposed to be the entitled ones here, but the adults seem to be more and more entitled than children in the history of how we've been doing things. The elders, respect them, be there for them, forgive them, understand them. You know, he's just an older person. Don't you, just show some understanding. Like, supposedly, the older person should have more understanding than the young person, right? Because they've lived longer. Why are we expecting more wisdom from the youth and no wisdom from the elders that have lived life? Well, because they don't self-reflect, right? The emotional maturity is absent. And so we're being called to be more mature than those who raised us. And then what? Show up as their parents and their caregivers and the ones that are going to save them from the inevitability of their own life, which is where everybody's life is going to lead, right? But if there's something that we learn in our lives, is that eventually we are all going to deal with the consequences of our actions one way or the next. And that's not to scare us, but if we think about the kind of life that we're building, the kind of relationships that we're creating, how we're taking care of our relationships, how much we're trying to show up in these relationships warmly, kindly, with empathy, and all of these things that we're building are going to be what we will have as a wealth later on in life, right? And it's almost like we're trying to build a house. Eventually we'll have a house, and then we live in the house. But these emotionally mature parents and these toxic parents did what they were supposed to do as parents, right? Raise you, send you to school, whatever. But the way they relationally interacted with you was so damaging and horrible that made you estrange yourself, right? Or not want to be around them when you grow up. And now suddenly you're ungrateful. But isn't that the consequences of their action? Not even a punishment, but more like, how long are you going to treat someone like garbage until they retaliate and they say enough, right? Why would you have the expectation that abusing someone over and over again for so many years wouldn't have them eventually say, you know what, I've had it with you because I don't need you, right? And so when the need evaporates from, the basic need of I need my parent so that I can eat and have a roof, then we may start to see that if we don't want to be around these people, we don't need them, so it's best that we keep ourselves safe from them. That is a layered topic, and it's a personal decision for how we will deal with these things. But just know that forgiveness is not mandatory for healing. And if you're not sitting somewhere graciously saying, I forgive my father, I forgive my mother, you're fine. You're doing great. For me, the victory would be that you're angry enough to be like, what? Why did they treat me this way? I deserved better. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear you get awakened to the fact that you deserve better. You deserve better so much that you get so angry and finally break free from trying to be around them and get them to give you that. And you finally get so angry that you go ahead and do it yourself. So in a nutshell, how I view healing and my offering for today for you is to understand that healing is we name the pain, we gather the truth, we honor the rage, we hold the grief, and then we're coming back to wholeness through connecting with ourselves and then with the world and the people that we choose, right? We go out there and do this once more. Because at first, everything happened to us. We were in the family. The only people who had connection with were these people who were unsafe connections. And now we're restarting, right? So basically you go from, I was hurt. Oh, wow, I was so hurt. This happened, whatever. You go to, I didn't deserve it. That anger, that beautiful rage anger. I got an email the other day that somebody said, your work has made me realize, has given me an important gift. I am feeling my anger. And I'm like, yes, that's what I want. And especially, as I said before, women getting in touch with their anger is going to change the trajectory of our lives. Right. So we go from I was hurt to I didn't deserve it to I don't owe anyone performance in any sort of way. This is my life. I'm gonna reclaim my life. And then this knowing that you deserve to be whole, right? So you go from performing to reclaiming. From smallness to owning up your power. From waiting around to be chosen to choosing yourself. And choosing yourself and also doing the choosing if need be. Like, please, no. No. From waiting around to be saved to you becoming the one you've been waiting for and saving yourself. One by one, you go back in time and you rescue all of these little girls that are trapped in time, believing they're unworthy, they're not good enough, and they can't be angry, they're not allowed to have feelings, they don't deserve respect. And you go there, and I was doing the session the other day, and I told this person, we went into the childhood bedroom, and I said, you know what, smash everything. And she was like, yes! She just broke everything in the room. It feels good to be in touch with our anger, although we've been made to feel ashamed. But being angry means you're finally realizing that you deserve more. And you're awakening to that. Wait a minute, I deserve more. So yeah, this is what healing is. And if you want someone to be your witness and to support you in the journey, Heal is the place for you. We can do it together. And I will see you soon.